Another Monday, time for another edition of Ask Mike, joined by our senior analyst here in the Big Trail Nation, Mike Irwin. Got a lot to talk about, Mike. We had a baseball series, didn't exactly get started right, but it finished right. And we had a basketball game that had a lot of hype going in. And man, I don't think it could have possibly gone any worse for Arkansas than what we saw on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think they would win that game. I certainly didn't think they would get blown out as badly as they did. It's interesting that in the polls they didn't drop.
Yeah, still number 20.
I'm not sure what that means, but I wouldn't panic if I'm a Razorback fan because this team has always bounced back from losses. They haven't lost 2 games in a row at any point this season. And generally with their bad losses, they've bounced back and played really well.
Yeah, we got Texas coming in here on Wednesday. Should be a big game, fun game, final home game of the year. First question here coming from Marty Hogg III, who asked, did our players not get any sleep Friday night? Because they sure were asleep on Saturday against the Gators. Seriously, what happened?
Well, I think if you get about 7 minutes into that game, they had the lead. So it started off.
Yeah, the first 7 minutes, not so bad.
That's usually the opposite. Usually Arkansas starts off slow, so they started off playing really well, but they were making shots the first few. Then what started happening was the outside shots stopped falling. Then I think Billy Richmond goes in with one of his typical, I'm going to go through 8 people and put up a layup, and he got it rejected because there's a lot of tall guys back there with a lot of hands that are just wiping those things out. And then, Thomas started missing shots. Acuff missed a couple of shots.
He finished with 17, but he didn't have it. That wasn't his game.
He was a little off. He was off in the first half. And I think they panicked a little bit when that happened. When your shots aren't starting to fall, I think you're starting to think about that instead of, whoa, now we got to go play defense. And what really happened with a lot of those missed shots, Florida just turned the tables on them, and it's Arkansas that usually fast breaks off missed shots. They were doing it. The other thing that I think really made a difference in this game is when I was analyzing this game before it happened, we had to do a couple of podcasts. One of the numbers that jumped out at me was that Florida wasn't a particularly good three-point shooting team, 30% going into that game. And Arkansas was more like 38%, so I thought, okay, don't have to worry too much about going out on the line and can concentrate more on stopping them inside. No, they were just, especially in the first half, just dropping in threes left and right. That made a big difference. The whole thing really shifted. It was Arkansas that wasn't hitting threes, and they were hitting threes, and then the same from 2. So then you get into the second half, and for a while, I would say till about the 10-minute mark, Arkansas was kind of holding their own. I don't think they were making up ground, but it wasn't getting worse, and then it just started going the other way. Yeah, and then you get into all the controversy that happened, which we'll talk about here in a minute, but they got up. I think they were down by as many as 37, 38 points, and I'm thinking if they get beat by 40, come on, this would be bad. What was really bad was I think they got it down into the low 30s, and Todd Golden put in his reserves, and they actually outscored Arkansas. They weren't even stopping the reserve. So I think it was a night where they just wanted to go home.
Well, they lost the first half, I think, 21, 22 points, and then they lost the second half. So it wasn't just a matter of we had a bad 20 minutes. They were bad start to finish. Do I have this right? This seems preposterous. Arkansas was out-rebounded 51 to 31.
Yeah, 20-point rebounding difference. And then the free throws. I mean, come on. They shot 32 free throws and made 25. Arkansas shot 24 and made 13. So they're killing you on the line. They're hitting you, killing you from 3, killing you from 2, out-rebounding you, getting second chance shots, just pretty much any stat you want to name, they're dominating it.
Yeah, it was a hard game to watch whenever you see Arkansas just not show up. I mean, the first 5 minutes, it seemed like they were prepared to play, but from there on out,
I had my whole family over. My kids came over, my grandkids, so the whole place is full, and I'm down there watching the living room trying to watch it, and they're all talking about different things, and they're getting up and walking around, and I'm trying to be polite, look through everybody, but yeah, it was a little hard to watch that, and then you just kind of give up on it.
Does Arkansas's depth concern you at all right now with some of the Carter Knox, Isaiah Sealy, things like that? You're getting down to, you basically got 6, maybe 7 bodies Not that they're getting tired, Mike, but whenever Malik Thomas, Darius Acuff, if they don't have their A game, who else is there as a viable option?
Well, I'm not so much worried about them fouling out because now they've gone several games and haven't fouled out. But what I am worried about is, as you said, everybody's got to score. And you can't have somebody like, I don't know, Billy Richmond, he did what he's been doing.
Scored 20 again, yeah.
So that's the one good thing, that this guy is on a roll. I had somebody suggest to me this morning, who works in this building, is a Hog fan, that they need to sit Acuff, just sit him from these two regular season games to end it, and then at the tournament, and then put him back. You can't sit a guy for 4 games and then stick him out there in the NCAA tournament. Yeah. I think, you just, I don't know, you can rest him more. Maybe if you want to do that, don't play him 35 minutes, play him 30 minutes, but I wouldn't leave him out. I wouldn't have him on the bench.
There was a moment there at the end of the Missouri game. It was the first time I can remember seeing it in a game. He was actually hobbling. So we've heard about the boot.
Yeah, we've heard about it.
Something actually happened at the end of the Missouri game. We're like, oh, that may be hurting him. So I get the justification to the kid needs a break. The kid may need a week or so off to kind of get right. Moving on to our next question here. Dr. Starks wants to know, why has nobody in the media asked Cal about playing zone defense? We struggle to contain off the dribble, have no depth, and are always dealing with foul trouble, and occasional zone defense could potentially be a game changer.
Yeah, you get a lot of that from the fans. And look, the guy just doesn't like zone defenses. I mean, we've seen him do it at times, but he'll do it for 4 or 5 minutes and then he's back out of it again.
It's not his philosophy.
It's just not what he believes, just like Eddie Sutton hated zone defenses. I personally like a good zone and I like a good man defense and prefer it over a zone, but you have to be able to play it well. And the problem with these guys was, for a long time they weren't. Now, when they had that one week off period and Cal emphasized it and they worked on it in practice, honestly, until this game, I thought they'd shown a lot of improvement on defense. So was this an outlier, just something that happens, and they'll be back playing good defense Wednesday here against Texas? Maybe, because that's what you have to hope.
Yeah, every coach has to be able to adapt. So I don't know if the zone's an answer, whatever it is, but they've got to find a way to get some more production top to bottom, because trying to rely on 2-3 guys to get a bulk of the scoring done, not exactly the best recipe to win games. Next question coming from Razor Boo. Moving forward, Brazil, Pringle, and Ewan need to average around 30 points and 18 rebounds a game for us to be competitive. The rest of the season, I am not sure if they have the grit and drive to do it. Mike, your thoughts?
First of all, with Pringle, I've come to the conclusion that it has a lot to do with his defense. If he gets in foul trouble early, he tends to check out. He's not going to have a good game. He's not going to score. He's not going to rebound. I think he's thinking too much about defense. And we're going to talk more about this in relation to another question about this later on. But I think he's a victim of what I've seen, maybe going all the way back to when Nolan was first here. At some point, basketball, from when I was a kid watching it to at least the last 30 years, has turned into the defensive players around the basket don't have hardly any rights. You see it all the time. About the only way an offensive player is going to be called for a foul in the lane or around the lane anymore is if they're in transition and you're set and they run over you. When you start bumping up to somebody, bump, 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 and you back them all the way up and then turn around and just lay it up, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. Now, the defensive player has to take a chance, because at some point you flop on that, but that can backfire on you too. So I think that affects Pringle. I think he's been called for some of these fouls have been totally unjustified, but I think it gets in his head. You can see, what are you doing? I think he's getting more frustrated rather than it going the other way. And I think as long as he's frustrated, you're not going to see much out of him.
What were your expectations for this Arkansas team heading into Saturday? I think a lot of people thought, hey, win 2 of the final 3 games, win 2 games in the SEC tournament, you're a good 4 seed, maybe a 3 seed, you can contend for the Final 4. I do feel there's a bit doom and gloom now when you lose a game by 34 points.
Well, again, I thought they would lose that game, and I still think.
But not by 34 points.
That's right, and I still think they'll lose to Missouri. So they could be on track to win the one game I thought they would win, but it's that big defeat that has people kind of questioning this now. Now, as far as what's wrong with those other 2 guys, I mean, Brazil, I don't know. maybe it's that if he's not scoring early on, if he's not hitting that three out there, or if he doesn't go in and get that looping layup, he kind of retreats. I don't know, a little bit, but he seems to be affected more by not scoring early on. I think Ewan, I'm going to make a prediction here. I think he'll be fine from here on out. I do. I think he'll play well in these next two games. I think he'll play well in the conference tournament, and I think he'll play well in the NCAAs. I think he's gotten an unfair. I think Cal has yelled at him for a lot of stuff. Okay, maybe some of that was justified when he wasn't practicing hard, but fans tend to get on him more than I think is justified. He's still, if you look at the balance of the season, he's had a lot of games where he stepped in, scored points, got rebounds. I think it's just hard for him when he maybe is the only guy in there, and he's got two or three bigs around him, a couple of bigs and a forward that can go up 6'4" and jump. So I think he's fine.
With Ewan, Pringle, and Brazil, for some reason I think of these guys when Cal says this, and he said it a bunch. I don't know who that was. That wasn't my team. This is the third time this year he said it. Houston, Auburn, and then again against Florida.
Yeah.
How long can you really say that? I feel like you get like 2 of those a year. Like, that wasn't my team that showed up.
That comes
3
up.
4 times.
Yeah, that's going to come up here in a minute. So I agree with you on that. I think people tend to stop wanting to hear that.
All right, Mike Irwin with a little tease there. A lot more to get to here on Ask Mike. We got to take our first time out. Back here on Ask Mike, trying to process what exactly went wrong for Coach Cal and the Hogs as they just got dominated Saturday in Gainesville. Next question coming from Cal Train. Hopefully he's not off the Cal Train. Florida just passed Kentucky on my hate list. What a bunch of punks. So they won big at home. I can't wait to see somebody bring these smart you-know-what down.
Yeah, that's frustration by that fan. And I've gotten that talking to some people walking around over this weekend, bumping into people in Walmart and different places. There's frustration there. But I think it also had to do with Chinilu. I guess that's how you pronounce his name.
The big man, yeah.
The big guy. And the fact that they were already up almost, I think it was over 30 points at this point, and it's at least midway through the second half. And he goes back and really pleads with Todd Golden to go call for a review on a thing with Brazil. And I guess he talked him into it because they did it. And I think that started to tick the fans off because when you saw the review on that, it looked really borderline.
Yeah.
Maybe it was technically, but if a team's up by 30 and I'm a ref, I'm going, come on, I'm not stopping.
I want to go home. Yeah.
Yeah, forget this. That's not a big deal. So I think, and then what he did after that, especially when he got taken out of the game with about 2 minutes to go and they brought in the reserves, he's over there waving his hands and flopping around and acting and just kind of showing off. Naturally, he's playing to his own student body. He's playing to his own fans. That's what you do. But if you're the other fan watching the team, Razorback fans watching this at home, you're going to be like this guy. He's a punk. They're like Kentucky now.
I got news for you. People in college basketball don't really like John Calipari. Arkansas didn't really like John Calipari before he came here. Todd Golden is just, he's in that mold. Florida's going to love him. The rest of the sport not really going to be on board with the way he acts.
Absolutely.
What a winner. Ever since that guy got to Florida and really what he even did prior to that at San Francisco.
I mean, they got a shot to win it again.
Head coach, no question. I think an argument can be made they might be better right now than they were 1 year ago, which is remarkable given that they won the toughest conference college basketball had ever seen just last year. Next question coming from Hog in the South who wants to know, is there something in the water in Gainesville that makes their coaches total jerks? I never liked Steve Spurrier. Dan Mullen was a flake. I like Todd Golden Boy even less. That flagrant one on Thomas he asked for and got was beyond low.
Yeah, again, I think that's probably the reaction to when those two coaches got into it. Because when he called for the flagrant one on, I think it was Malik Thomas, and they actually gave it to him. And I looked at that thing and I went, are you serious?
Yeah, what's really there?
I mean, there's the elbow or whatever is nowhere near above the top of his shoulders. I don't see that's a flagrant one. And he got it. Now, the announcers, if you're watching that game on television, their interpretation of that was two teams are getting chippy with each other. We got to, any sort of outbreak, fight, or any kind of problem between, we got to nip it in the bud right here. So we just slap him with an and one.
Yeah.
And we'll start doing this.
We'll take control of the game.
We'll take control of the game. So that was their interpretation of what happened. I think that irritated Cal. But then later on, you had Pringle down on Florida's end, and he pulls on Chinaloo's the back of his jersey a little bit, tugging on it a little bit. Chinaloo turns around and just wraps his whole arm around his neck, and he goes down. And yes, they ended up reviewing that and doing a flagrant one on Chinaloo, but then they also gave Pringle a common foul. And if you look at Cal, he's standing over there, and when he finds out that there was a common foul on Pringle, he just starts going off. Well, then what happened was Todd Golden sees that, and he starts yelling. And then they start yelling at each other. I'm thinking this guy's watching that, and that's why he hates him now. I probably had no opinion about him until this particular game.
Yeah, it's easy to hate somebody whenever they're really rubbing it in your face, and it felt like there were some of those moments in that game. Old Guy fan, next up here. When UTA's pitcher shut us out for 8 2/3 innings, moving on to baseball here, he got a standing ovation when he finally left the game. Contrast that with Florida fans who started the overrated chant on Acuff. I mean, they were up by 25. Why the need to show your butt? They were shaking it in the face, right, Mike?
Here's the thing about that. Okay, yeah, Razorback fans were showing some class when this guy almost pitches a two-hit complete game, performance against Arkansas, a shutout. And he ends up, after 130 pitches, finally coming out of the game. And yeah, there were some fans over there on the third base side. I don't know if they stood up. I can't remember. They clapped for him. Those are regular adult-type fans.
I was at the game. Spectacular day for baseball. Bummer of an ending. Yes, there were some fans that gave him an applause.
But these were adult-type fans over there. They weren't students over there. These are students. Students do that. How many times have we seen Arkansas students do that to the guys from the other team?
What about the Hog Pen? I mean, notoriously ruthless, and they've drawn more middle fingers than any other student section in college baseball.
Yeah, so it's done by all of them. Does anybody take it seriously when you're calling Acuff overrated? Of course he's not overrated. But that's not the point of what they're doing. They're just hamming it up because their team is winning and they're happy, and you're not ever going to change that.
You got a thought on this, Mike? Darius, whenever you hear those overrated chants, you know you're doing something right because they don't boo nobodies. So when you get that kind of reaction, and to me, that's a term of endearment. That's a sign of true respect.
Where it could have backfired on them, I think he had about 11 points at the time, and he had a surge there at the end because he was mad. So it didn't affect this game, but if the game is closer, student sections can cause problems for their own team by doing that nonsense. If it makes the other, if I'm a coach, I'm just telling you, I can't do anything about the students. They're going to do what they're going to do. But at some point, I don't know how you address this. I don't know that you do it during a game. But somehow I make a statement at a press conference or something where I say, look, I love you students, but don't get us beat. Be a little smart. The overrated thing is just idiotic. It's just because what you're doing, again, if you're beating somebody, I don't care if it's a player not playing well or if they're reacting to the fact that you're beating. If you say they're overrated, what you're doing is minimizing what your own team is doing. And I don't think they look at it that way, but that's what they're doing. They're taking credit away from their own team and just saying, hey, you guys aren't really playing all that well. It's just these guys are overrated.
Since Cal has been here multiple times, I believe once was after the Kansas scrimmage, that was in the postgame kind of thing. This year, Louisville, number 6 in the country, he grabbed the mic after the game. He said, hey, guys, we love you. You're great. We love the support. No overrated stuff. Is that his line of thinking?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. It's silly when you think of it, but who said students have to make any sense? They can do what they want to do.
That's right. Hey, those students, they pay their ticket. In Florida, they pay that athletic fee. Even if they don't want the tickets, they still have to pay to the athletic department. So,
yeah.
I'm all for it. As long as everything is, quote unquote, tasteful. Don't step over the line. I think we all know what that line is.
You got security people in there, a landmark or whatever. I don't know whether it's security, what they call them, but they're in there. If you get out of control, they'll run you out of the building.
Another thing, let the kids on the floor, right? Are you with me on that? You only go to college one time. Let them on the field, let them on the court.
I've never understood that. They act like people. I think what happened was years ago, somebody got hurt. Somebody fell down. And one thing, and they act like, well, if that was the case, then we better not ever get in our automobiles because you might have a wreck and get hurt.
Now, I don't think you should tear down the goalpost. I think that's dangerous. Yeah. But letting the kids on the field.
Yeah. I mean, once in a blue moon, somebody falls down and somebody steps on them. I mean, there are things that you cannot control to that degree. You still got to let human beings enjoy things. I don't like that. I wish it was allowed.
You only go to college, most of us at least, one time in your life. As Houston Nutt was just in here last week in the studio, he told Peyton Hillis, told his players all the time, these are the best days of your life, man. Go out and enjoy it. Part of that, go be a student. Get in the student section, have some fun, do some jeers, do some cheers, get on the field after a big one.
2001, when Arkansas beat Texas after not playing them for several years, Sam Pittman's here, and they just poured. I mean, within a matter of 30 seconds, that whole field was full of people. It was unbelievable. And I can't believe they got fined for that. I mean, it's just so. And the TV people to me should tell the NCAA, shut up. We like that. It's visually.
It's a TV show.
Yes, it promotes your sport, you dopes. I mean, that's what I felt about the SEC. You're sitting here making a school pay for something that actually benefited the conference. Are you crazy? What is wrong with you? But it's that, oh yeah, somebody could get hurt. Yeah. How many times has that happened? Once?
All for protecting the people, but again, they're kids. Let them go be kids. Next question coming from WV Hog fan who asked, was it out of frustration or retaliation for transferring that our players went after Boogie Fland?
Yeah, look, they were frustrated, and that was part of it. But frustrated because he transferred? No, because he wanted to come back, from what I understand. That's a big, long, complicated thing about what happened there. He played pretty well in the non-conference part of the season last year. Arkansas was 11-2 under him, and he was averaging just a little under 15 points a game. But in SEC play, Arkansas lost 5 straight, and they were 1-5 when Fland got injured. His average dropped to about 12-8 during that stretch, not overall, but during that stretch. So he wasn't playing all that well. Okay, when he leaves with an injury, they go 8-5 for the rest of the regular season and into the conference tournament. And DJ Wagner and John L. Davis and Thero basically kind of took over and did all the scoring. And Arkansas fans are basically sitting there thinking, well, wow, we're playing better without him than with him. So they weren't all that concerned. Okay, he comes back for the second NCAA tournament game, St. John's.
First one was Kansas.
Didn't play in the Kansas game. He scored 6 points. Okay, that's fine. But then in the next game, in which they lost to Texas Tech, he didn't score any points. So he's virtually a non-factor in the tournament. Then he declares for the draft. He jumps into the draft. And it wasn't going apparently well for him, and at the last minute he realized that, so he wanted to come back. And at that point, Cal had Acuff, he had Thomas, he had Wagner coming back. He doesn't need another guard like that.
I will say this. Nobody's going to take Boogie Fland over Darius Acuff.
Yeah.
Everybody would want Darius Acuff.
That's right.
As opposed to Boogie Fland.
So Cal just said, look, you need to jump in the portal and you'll find a place. And look, it turned out to be the best thing that could happen for him. I remember when this happened, he got a bunch of money, NIL money from Florida.
$2 million. Reported.
That's a lot.
Sure is.
Then I watched him early on, and he wasn't playing all that well. He was running the point well. He was getting assists. He was doing his job. He just wasn't scoring, missing a lot of shots, missing free throws. But they stuck with him, and now he's playing his best basketball. He's starting to hit threes, starting to hit free throws, and he's on a team that we talked about earlier may end up winning a national championship. So he's better off than he was. So why did he say before the game, oh, they loved me when I was playing, but then I got hurt, and then they didn't like me anymore? That's not what happened. He just left, and they got better. And Cal's sitting there going, "Hey, I really don't need you to come back. You're better off if you go somewhere else." And you know, Cal, he's not going to put some player in a bad situation. I think he honestly believed Boogie would be better off somewhere else than if he came back here, because he'd be sitting on the bench a lot. And so he did him a favor. So don't say that stuff.
And never going to fault a kid for going and getting the bag, whatever it was.
Yeah.
$1 million, $2 million.
He comes out $2 million and may play for the national championship, and he's mad at Arkansas. And I think that's why Arkansas's players reacted to him. It was like, what are you doing? Don't run your mouth against us.
And in defense of him here, I did hear a cut on the radio that quote was kind of taken out of context. He was asked by somebody about, what have you learned through the years? and that was his answer. It wasn't specific to Arkansas, but it certainly, look, Mike, we're not dumb. There's context to everything, right? So it kind of had a shot at Arkansas.
If I'm him, here's what I say. I got nothing to complain about. I'm riding high. I'm glad where I'm at. I'm doing great.
And I'm glad they're doing well, too.
Yeah, something like that instead of what he said.
All right. A lot more to get to here on Ask Mike. Got to take a time out. We'll be right back. Back with more of your questions here with Mike Irwin on Ask Mike, and we got something to talk about that we already brought up earlier in the show, so we're going to dive right into it now. Jimmy Hogg asking, why does Calipari keep saying that's not my team when they get beat? What if the players said that's not our coach when Arkansas lost? Not a good look. And he ain't wrong here, Mike. Pretty good point.
I think he's kind of misinterpreting that, but Cal probably doesn't stop to ask himself what that looks like when he says that. He would be better off saying that's not our team rather than my team, because it sounds like he's separating them from himself and saying I didn't really cause this loss, they did. And I don't think that's what he's doing. You get all kinds of coaches. I've talked about it before. There are some coaches that would just get, Eric Musselman, if you lost a game like that and didn't play, he would get in your face, he would yell, he was mad. Cal's not a screamer. He's not the kind of guy that's going to, I guarantee you, he didn't jump all over them after that game, because his attitude is, hey, I don't want them to overreact to what happened. I don't want them walking around, thinking, oh my goodness, this is the end of the world. So he does that. It's just the way he says it is unfortunate. Again, if he said that's not our team instead of that's not my team, then maybe it would come across a little better.
Cal didn't have any problem screaming at Todd Golden. He'll get after him in the right circumstances. No problem screaming at John Chaney either. But really, what I think you're alluding to, he's trying to compliment his guys.
Yeah.
It's like, we're a lot better than that.
Yeah.
But I understand why it doesn't always come across.
Yeah, a lot of fans look at it as he's separating himself from the loss. That's not my fault. That's their fault. I don't think that's what he means when he does that, but I can see where you'd think it was.
Next question here coming from Parallax Pig, who wants to know, how is it legal now for offensive players to lower their shoulder and bulldoze a defensive player in the paint? Was there a rules change? And calls are going to be a little bit different sometimes on the road. That's
what I was referring to earlier, because I go back. I'm so old that I remember when defensive players had rights. You got to handle it right. You got to know when to flop. And I think they hurt the defensive players when they came up with that rule a few years ago, where if you flop, they determined it was an actual flop and you weren't being hit, they could assess you with a T. Here's my view of what happened there. I think the people that run the game decided a long time ago that people viewing at home would rather see offense than defense. So they just sort of bend the interpretation of the rules in favor of the guy down low with the ball rather than, and I think they're wrong. I think there are plenty of people out there that would appreciate a good defensive player. Mm-hmm. But again, what happens to Pringle is he's down there, he just gets bumped backwards, and then I call this the vanish or cease to exist rule. If they get ready to shoot and you're a defensive player anywhere around that basket, if there's any contact at all, it doesn't have to be contact that you initiated. If they bump into you, you have to either cease to exist or vanish, or you'll be called for a foul. And that's just wrong. It's just wrong as it can be. You have rights there. You have a right to the space you're in. So how do I have a right to just bump you backwards, yeah, and then turn around? And if I go up and I hit you on the way up, I don't like that 3-point rule where you do that, where you get somebody up in the. Well, look, if you go up for a 3-point shot and they reach out and hit your hand, that's one thing. But we see this all the time. You fake it and then you lean into them as they go up. How is that a foul? You're running into them. But I see it all the time.
They should be entitled to that space too, right?
Yes, it's ridiculous, honestly.
Just doesn't always seem to be called that way. Next question here coming from Hill Country Hog, who says, our baseball team lost games to Arkansas State and Texas Arlington last week. We were supposed to be a top 5 team. What's going on here?
Yeah, there were a lot of, in those two games, it was kind of two different things that was going on. In that first game, they hit Arkansas's pitching. And Arkansas, it's not unusual for a midweek team, for your own team, to get hit your own pitchers get hit by a mid-major type team.
Yeah.
Because they're midweek, especially early in the season, you may be pitching a bunch of guys that are out there for the first time, freshmen or transfers. So I wasn't so much concerned about that, but they got, I don't know, 14 hits, 12 runs. That's a little excessive. But then it was, you only scored 4 runs on them. Come on. Is their pitching that really
Nearly got run ruled. You didn't just get hit around.
They were very close to being run ruled in a midweek game. And then you come back the next day, and it's the other way around. You only score 1 run, and and the only reason you won that game is because your pitchers pitched a 1-hit shutout. 4 guys combined for 1. So it's really a strange situation. Then you go to this Friday game against UT Arlington, and the offense is almost non-existent. This guy, Taylen Green, he shuts Arkansas out for 8 2/3 innings. He gets up to 130 pitches. And I'm thinking, how is this guy going to kill himself?
Finally started getting hit.
And he finally, walked a guy or something, had a problem, so they took him out. And he got charged with a couple of runs, but they brought in another guy, and he almost blew the game. I mean, Arkansas was in a position to win that game, and then there was a shot down. I think it was
forget who it was, but is it played at third or short?
Oh, golly.
I don't think it was Cahillo.
Micah New, I think, was the guy.
They had the go-ahead run was at the plate.
And it was a shot down the line at third base, and the guy made a great play and caught it. Okay, so here's the problem is you're going 3 straight games, and you're scoring 3 runs, 1 run, and 4 runs. And you're not in SEC play. So now a lot of fans are going, what in the world is going on here? Now, thankfully, they outscored UTA in those next 2 games 20-1. So their team batting average, after those first 3 games this week, they dropped to 15th out of 16 teams. Well, guess what? Now they're up to 13th.
Just after 2 games.
So they've moved up. But their pitching is good. They're number 2 in the SEC right now in ERA and number 4 in fielding percentage. So in 2 of the 3 measurables, they're doing really well. It's just that hitting thing that's a problem. And every game they play, and there's not many left, and they may end up losing some of their games this weekend if they get rain, but they need to be prepared for SEC play. We need some sort of sign that these guys are coming around. Now, there was supposedly some crud going around, and some of the players were sick or whatever, and maybe they were out there playing not feeling good. I don't know. All I know is the fans are starting to panic a little bit because they're watching these guys strike out. And again, I need one of those cameras that like cops go around with.
Body cams. Yeah.
Body cam. Because people will come up to me, and there's one guy comes up, and there's more, this has happened more than once. They start in with this Nate Thompson stuff. And they'll tell you, all the signs are there, I've seen it. With Nate Thompson, here's what you see. The first pitch is a fastball right down the middle of the plate, and they don't swing at it. And then they come back with 2 straight curveballs that drop down on the outside corner of the plate, and they're swinging at 100 miles an hour and miss, and they strike out. Or another version of that is they strike out on the 3rd strike, they strike out looking. But it's all supposedly because they're swinging too hard, they're swinging out of their shoes, they're not patient, they swing ahead on off-speed pitches, they're ahead of the pitch. On some of these others, they're below the pitch, they pop the ball up too much because they're trying to hit home runs, and they pop it up in the air, or they got fly balls, and all of that's Nate Thompson's fault. And it's easy to get sucked into that. Here's the thing that you have to ask yourself, because none of us are over there when they do their batting practice, when he works with them, whatever the philosophy is. But you got to assume that Van Horn is, and if he thought what the fans thought, wouldn't he change this? I mean,
you would think so, right? Naturally.
I don't think he has a huge issue with the way they are being taught.
Yeah.
And I also think it's very easy to think maybe that's swinging from your heels when it's actually you just didn't do a good job at the plate on that particular at-bat.
And there's ebbs and flows to it. I'm probably crossing up the years here, but I think 24, the offense largely struggled. And then 25, probably the best offense in school history.
Yeah, it was amazing. Well, he's still the batting coach. Yeah. So what's the difference? He didn't suddenly come and change everything up again.
And a lot of the players were the same too,
Yeah.
from 24 to 25.
That's the other thing that's at least semi-concerning right now, is that Helfrich is doing okay. He's not what they thought he would be so far. That doesn't mean he can't be, but he's not hitting the ball the way they thought he would. I think Kozel is starting to come around a little bit.
He's got 5 homers?
Yeah. Aloy got hot there for a while. He cooled off this past week. He wasn't doing much. Robinette is he's always been kind of up and down. Nobody can accuse Robinette of swinging for the fences. He doesn't do that.
Micah knew was going to be a middle of the order guy. He's kind of struggled to find the bat.
Yeah, he has. He's hit for power, but he hadn't hit for an average yet. And then the shortstop, he was batting like .08 or something.
It was under 100. Yeah.
And I think he's got a couple of hits since then. But he's been look pretty good lately. He runs fast. He's fast. He's moving guys around a little bit.
And they love what he does defensively.
And he's taking a walk or two, so he's pretty careful. I think he'll come around. He's a guy that every once in a while you get, and especially at a key position like shortstop, you can put up with a guy that bats under 200. You just can't, because he's just too valuable to you defensively. And I don't see them moving him out. He's just too good.
A lot of college baseball programs do have, maybe not power programs, but they have a player or two in the starting lineup that's under 200 because they're a plus defender. Arkansas, you would hope, though, could avoid something like that, but have to wait and see. Next question here. When a kid signs a letter of intent with any school, then shouldn't that be considered a binding contract? If so, then how are you allowed to enter a transfer portal before getting consent from the school first? This is coming from Big Mike Hogg.
Well, teams don't own a player. You can sign with a school and just leave. There's nothing to stop you from doing that.
There's no rules. So.
And especially right now. Now, the only issue is if you've gotten NIL money, do you owe them part of that money back? And Arkansas tried to challenge that, and the last time I heard, I think that got dropped. I was told by somebody kind of familiar with this situation that those trying to collect money that you've already paid somebody, when they don't live up to their part of the bargain, it's not enforceable on the contract unless and until they become employees of the university. Mm-hmm. If you make these kids employees of the university, then you can enforce the contract. If you don't, they're not going to be able to enforce it. A much better way to deal with this rule, and we've seen athletic directors call for it, we've seen some coaches call for it, and Greg Sankey called for it last week, and that is to bring back the one-time transfer rule. That is, you're allowed one free transfer wherever you want to go, but when you do it a second time, you've got to sit out a year. And that would solve the problem, believe me. Now, I asked somebody I'm talking about that. I said, well, what would they pay you NIL money to sit out? Like if I want to steal a player from some other school.
Some schools would.
And I say, okay, you come to our, we'll give you a bunch of NIL money. Would you pay him to sit out for a year? Because that's what he's going to have to do. Maybe. So maybe that doesn't solve the problem. But I think in a lot of cases it would. We'd have to see if, I don't even know if they can get that passed, but that would be the better solution.
Yeah.
You just, it galls some fans that you sign with a school and then leave, but it's always, that's not something new. You've always been able to leave.
Yeah.
It's just that you had to sit out if you did it.
We've been over this so many times, but maybe we have a different audience here this week. The idea of them being employees that you brought up. Why do you feel that will not happen? And part of me believes right now the players don't want to be employees because they've never had it better.
Never had it better.
Freedom of movement and unlimited funding.
Agents don't want it. Lawyers of agents don't want it.
Why wouldn't the schools want it? Because I don't think they do either, and I can't tell you why.
It's the academic side. For whatever reason, the people on the academic side don't like it. I got no idea, because it's not like, I promise you, when I went to school, I worked for the school. I worked as a janitor.
A real job, not these fake jobs are getting.
It was a part-time job, but they were paying me, just like you would on this deal, because we're not talking about full-time employees. We're talking about these athletes, the way they list it, the NCAA list it, you're supposed to work 20 hours a week in your sport. So you'd be paid for 20 hours a week. You'd be technically a part-time employee. And they've got part-time employees. I promise you they do. They got people working in their student union. They got people working in their libraries. So you've got students being paid. I don't know why you couldn't pay athletes, but they're apparently against it.
got to have a change. I don't know if it's Congress, whatever, but if you want college to kind of look like it did a couple of years ago, there's going to have to be some type of governance over the sports to actually make some rules.
Trey, it's going to happen.
The TV ratings say it's more popular now than ever.
It is, but it's going to happen because it's going to get too expensive. These boosters are only going to be able to do this for so long.
But some schools are doing it.
Yeah, they're doing it for a while, but how long? How long till a booster goes, wait a minute, I'm running out of money here?
So look what we saw in Major League Baseball back when it was the Yankees, the Red Sox, and Dodgers spending all that money. Finally, 30 years later, we've gotten to the point where most of the sport is saying no more. We need a salary cap.
Yeah.
So I hope it doesn't take college football that long, but who knows? Up against it here, we got to take a break. Back to wrap up this week's Ask Mike after a quick timeout. Back to put a bow on this week's Ask Mike. Jumping right into more of your questions here. Hog Redneck says, we all knew that Taylen Green is athletic. I had no idea he would set 3 QB records at the combine. 4.36 40, 43.5-inch vertical leap, 11.2 in the broad jump. Looks like he'll make a good wide receiver in the pros. Hey, Matt Jones went in the first round as a wide receiver. These numbers smash what Matt Jones did.
Yeah, I don't think that 40 time is a record, but it's probably second or third best of all time. Here's the thing. There are people already saying, well, I mean, come on. What does that suggest to you? Fast, jumping?
Suggests to me they should have won more games, but
that speaks wide receiver to me.
Sure does.
There is a big if there, though. Nobody knows if he can catch the ball. Now, here's the thing. NFL people that are considering drafting him are going to bring him in and work him out. What are they going to do? Are they going to bring him in and say, we're working you out as a quarterback? Are they going to say both? Or a receiver? What are they going to do? He has said, I'm a quarterback. I was on the radio with Matt Jones, the quarterback, the ex-Razorback quarterback this morning. He said he's going as a quarterback, I promise you. So he thinks he will, and he may. But here's what he's going to have to do, because I went back and did a lot of thinking over the last month and a half about all this, especially once I saw how well he was doing at the combine. He's throwing the ball really well, too. There were some shots of him throwing 60 yards on just drop a dime on these receivers. So what went wrong? And I've come to the conclusion that Bobby Petrino put too much on his plate. He should have simplified the offense for him. I think Petrino might be the coach right now if he'd done that. That's a whole nother subject. But the point is, that may sound great for college. It doesn't speak to you being an NFL quarterback.
The NFL, it's ultra complicated.
Yeah, if you come in there and say, we're gonna have to simplify this offense in order for you to be successful, they're not going to do that. So what's he going to have to do to convince them I can be a quarterback? And that's what he's supposedly telling people. I'm a quarterback. He's going to have to go in there and identify the problem. He's going to have to say, I fumbled, I threw interceptions, I got sacked.
I made the wrong read, all that
when
stuff.
This all happened, and I'm going to correct that. And if he convinces them, then maybe they think we'll work with this guy for 2 or 3 years and he can become a great quarterback. But right now, it's up in the air. I'm not sure which way it's going to go.
It was a breathtaking performance, and I do believe this. If he designated himself as, hey, I'm playing wide receiver, I think he'd be drafted higher than he would or will be as a quarterback, but that's a different discussion.
That's right.
Next question here coming from Hog in Iowa says, when watching the Hogs softball games, I noticed all the empty seats behind home plate marked as reserved. Are these seats sold to season ticket holders who just never shows up for these games? Man, softball team wagon right now. They're killing fools.
That's the only conclusion I can come to. I sent a question over there and never got an answer on it, but the only other answer is those may be corporate seats, but I'm not sure if they're corporate seats for softball. It's probably people who bought season tickets. Those are high-dollar season tickets. We all know that if you got a lot of money and you can spend a lot of money on season tickets, you can do what? You can decide which games you go to.
George is coming in town this week.
Yeah, I'm going to stay at home for these non-conference softball games, but when and they might not go to all the big SEC games. I'll go to 4 games a year, but I'm willing to pay for season tickets to go to 4 or 5 games a year. That's what I think it is.
Yeah, it could be, man. Softball team. Shout out to Courtney Deifel. They have been fantastic so far. Next question coming from PG Hog 1, who says, if I remember correctly, you said a few months ago that Yurichek didn't want to hire a fundraiser. Can you shed any light on why he doesn't want to do it?
I don't think I said that because he has fundraisers over at the foundation. I think what this was in relation to was I mentioned that I'd talked to Houston Nutt over the phone, and I'd ask him if he, now that he's moved back here, did he see himself with any role with the athletic department? He said maybe as a fundraiser. And so he brought that up. He said it to me, but then in other interviews that and you had him on last week, and I don't know if he mentioned that then, but I saw another podcast with him where he said, nobody from Arkansas has contacted me about anything.
That is what he said. He hasn't had any discussions, which isn't a no, isn't a yes. He kind of, I think in respect to certain people, he sort of left it alone.
Here's what I think's going on with Juracek in that regard. He wasn't here when all that controversy went on, but he's probably heard about it. And my guess is he's sitting there thinking, we don't need any of that, you know. I don't want to make some fans mad who don't like Houston Nutt. I'll just leave it where it is. That's a guess. I don't know that that's what it is, but it is. Now, I personally think that's a mistake. I'll just say that flat out. There are things Houston Nutt could do to help this. If I'm the AD, I hire him in the athletic department, not in the foundation, and here's what I tell him. I want you to go out and get those Razorback clubs reestablished, and I especially want you to go to Central Arkansas. We've got a PR problem down there right now because we're not playing War Memorial anymore.
You might have to play a game there to do it. You might have to.
No, because I think what you could do with him is you could send him down there and help him soften the blow of that. He could go down there and explain to those people, we just can't play there anymore. We can't afford it. We can't upgrade it. It's causing problems. If he's telling them that, and he grew up down the road from down Markham from War Memorial, then maybe they accept it. I just think he could help.
Houston was in here, and he and Peyton, man, they were all lathered up. They're on the same page. You got Conway boy, Little Rock boy. Yeah. He said, we got to keep playing games there. And I said, well, Houston, it could cost you $100, $200 million to just reasonably renovate that stadium. He was like, oh. You're asking me. I'm a Little Rock guy.
Well, he would have to. I get what he's saying. In order to use him, if I'm the AD, you got to drop that. Yeah. You got to go down there and convince him the opposite is true. And I don't know if he would. Maybe he wouldn't want to.
Final question of the week here coming from Mousetown, who asks, can you believe it? The women's basketball team not only won an SEC game, they blew the doors off Auburn. Maybe they can win a game in the SEC tourney. Who knows? Maybe they could beat South Carolina, Mike.
Okay, what's that song, Hallelujah chorus? Hallelujah. Yeah. I feel like that should be playing right now because I'm watching that game. And it's not so much that they're winning because somebody, Hayden or somebody said, hey, they're winning. And I went over and I looked at the score.
By 30?
I went, what is this? I just wanted you to win a game. So I would say, first of all, you're better than the men's football team of 2025 because you won a game. They didn't. So there's that. But you got a blowout. So he's right. I mean, maybe they come back and win this first SEC game. Now they're going to have to play Kentucky. And
they did play close this year.
Kentucky beat Arkansas by 20. I went and looked that up.
Got it. Never mind. It wasn't close.
Yeah, they beat them by 20. So, but I think they're getting better. I do. I felt like that for about the last month because here's what happens when you watch the Arkansas women. They'll be rocking along in the second quarter, and it's a 4-point lead, and they're playing pretty well. And then the next time you know, by halftime, it's 12, 15 points, and then in the third quarter, it goes bad on them. The big problem they've had all year long is they go on these scoring droughts, and they don't play defense when that happens. It's almost exactly what happened to the men against Florida. And I think it's something to do with when you're not scoring, you don't play good defense either because your mind is on offense, it's not on defense. If they've got it together now where they can play a whole game and not let these scoring droughts go on, they might win some games. They might win one.
Just give me one. Give me one in the tournament. That'd be a nice little moment.
And then what does that mean for next year?
The sky's the limit, Mike. Recruiting class going to get a little bit better. All right, he's Mike Irwin, out of time here this week. Got a busy weekend here. Final 2 games of the year for the Razorback basketball team. 4-gamer against Stetson. Final weekend without SEC games in baseball for the Diamond Hogs. Out of time here this week. Thank you for joining us.